Hello, I'm Dan.
I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Daniel, we're talking about Gert Palmcrantz.
Incredible.
I know.
that might be the most incredible name I've ever heard.
So, there's an interesting bit of continuity that's going on here, Dan, because
I see.
I'll just read you the first sentence. It's a stub. It's a very short article, this, but
Okay.
I think we've got a fair bit to talk about, so it's not a problem.
Sure.
Gert Palmcrantz, born the 1st of February, 1938, is one of the most distinguished sound engineers in Sweden.
No way.
Yeah, way.
Good
God himself.
night. Amazing.
Yeah, I just one of those things, I guess. I can't say I've ever heard of this guy, but he is Swedish and follows on from our 100th episode spectacular that we recorded quite a while ago now, actually, because we recorded that one out of order. It was well over a month ago that we actually sat down to record it, because obviously, one of our guests had a very busy schedule. Eric from Alaska is all over the place, and we just had to squeeze him in somewhere. But we made it work, and I think it was a pretty good episode. A lot of my friends actually listened to it and said they really enjoyed sort of just the whole vibe. So I'm hoping that people might have found the podcast from it, which would be nice.
In which case, if you have found the podcast and you're new to this ridiculous thing that we do, then welcome to the readership.
Welcome.
You will, if you would like, you can peruse our back catalogue of a fairly extensive list of silliness. But for now, we've got Swedish sound engineers, which is perfect, I think.
We will make a pledge to try and make this as non-navel-gazing and in-jokey as possible. But one of the very things about the Wikicast is that it is very in-joking.
We're gonna try and not do that. However, the next segment after this will be my choral piece of the week, which, as in-jokey and niche goes, is pretty strong.
Yeah, you're right. So anyway, we're talking about Swedish sound engineers, Dan. Do you know any off the top of your head?
I know loads.
Oh, could you name one?
No. I need to for sort of GDPR.
Of course.
I'm afraid I'm unable to disclose that level
Yes.
of detail. However, I can confirm that I know loads.
They just go to a different school.
Yeah.
So the one that, of course, that we all know of is Gert Palmcrantz, one of the most distinguished sound engineers in Sweden, who was born in 1938, so he is 83, so doing pretty well for himself. And he commenced his career in the late 1950s at the gramophone studios of Europa Film. Which now is that? No, I was thinking of it might have been the company that distributed The Seventh Seal, because that was also like Scandi at that point, but I don't know if that was Swedish. I think it might have been Norwegian, to be fair. And in 1976, Palmcrantz recorded Sweden's best-selling jazz record of all time.
Whoa.
Do you remember this record, Dan?
I'm sure it had a name.
Its name, of course, was Jazz at the Pawnshop.
Of course. That's the
spelled
one.
Pawn shop.
Let me just sort of rifle through my record collection here. Yes, I've got the album art here now. I mean, what a record! Really, really spectacular.
It has it like a wiki, and I love how the first line of the Wikipedia is Jazz at the Pawnshop is a multi-session recording made by Gert Palmcrantz at the Jazzpupenstampen.
Glorious.
What? That's like somebody who tried to just made up words to try and make it sound Swedish. Oh, at the Jazzpupenstampen.
Jazz at the Pawnshop vinyl. In fairness, it's got a pretty cool album cover.
Describe it.
It's got a sort of spooky, scary skeletons font and typography for Jazz at the Pawnshop, and then what looks like a sort of very sort of sepia-toned watercolor of two posters on the side of a sort of wooden billboard, or maybe the side of a wooden shack.
This looks like a screenshot from Red Dead Redemption 2. with spooky, scary skeleton font over the top.
It really does. I was trying to think of a better way of describing that topography, but I had to go with spooky, scary skeletons.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a better way, to be fair. That is exactly what I would have said.
Yeah.
But apparently it's one of the best, according to audiophiles, it's one of the best jazz recordings of the 20th century.
No way.
Thanks, Gert. That's Gert Lush.
I'm going to listen to that today.
I had a question that I wanted to follow up from immediately from that, which was like, I don't know this about you, but I'm going to guess, are you the kind of person who really goes in for like listening to stuff on vinyl and LPs?
I do enjoy, I think, the sort of pomp and ceremony of putting on a record. And if you've got a good record player, I think you really can hear quite a tremendous difference. In fact, I was talking about records with the esteemed Reverend Canon James Mustard, the Canon Precentor of Exeter Cathedral, for we were sitting with some other musical folk in a very exciting new cocktail bar that's opened in Exeter called The Mermaid.
You do love your cocktails, don't you?
I'm a bit of a... I had an absolutely extraordinary dirty vodka martini, which was very, very nice indeed. Anyway, we were talking about records, and one of the reasons why, when it comes to a sort of audiophile perspective, with my sort of limited understanding, is if you take an ABBA record, for instance, there would be several songs or tracks on that LP, but the amount of sort of quality and space and depth and detail given to the songs across the LP would vary. So much so that I think it was, it might be something like Dancing Queen or Does Your Mother Know That You're Out or something like that.
Right.
Where the literal bandwidth on each record would vary so that actually the proportion of space on the physical disc, the literal bandwidth, would be greater for certain tracks to create a more sort of fulsome sound. I've realised that while we were having this conversation, another reader of this podcast, Professor Matt Can, was also around, so he'll be hearing me talk about this little anecdote that James was spinning, and I just hope I've done it justice. Matt will be able to confirm. But yes, I do like records, effectively.
There is a certain something to it. There's the imperfections and the crackle that you get. Like I have really fond memories of, and it was basically the only record I can ever remember listening to as a kid. And at this point, I had no interest in the subject really at all. But I just liked the experience. Was listening to an LP of Carols at King's, which was, I assume, like a big famous one that they did in, I don't know, like the 70s or something. But like it was just that comfy feel of the hiss and the crackle was just wonderful.
If it was the 70s, it would have also been that glorious sort of through the 70s. It started disappearing really in the sort of mid 80s, where they actually started singing. They got away from King's vowels. So, for instance, they would spell Magnificat with an E.
Magnificat.
Magnificat.
Oh wow, Magnificat.
My soul doth magnify, not my soul doth magnify. And that's such.
My soul doth magnify the Lord.
Exactly that. And it's a very funny thing. But yes, they would have started to get away from there.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to sort of follow up on was, saying we wanted to listen to this. We have a great friend, Hugo Whitman, who is a big jazz aficionado, loves jazz and plays it himself. I personally don't feel like I'm very jazz literate. I don't know about you. I don't think I know enough about the subject.
I'm not sure whether I know enough about the subject, but I certainly listen to a lot of jazz.
What kind of stuff do you listen to?
I struggle with the really, really abstract stuff.
Right, yeah.
But I listen to a lot of sort of jazz funk fusion stuff. Similarly, more sort of classical jazz with maybe just piano or perhaps a trio, jazz trios. There's a comedian I admire a great deal called Dudley Moore. Who had the famous combo with Peter Cook. And he, in later years, put together his own, because he was a very accomplished musician as well as a comedian, He put together his own jazz trio, and that's very good.
Yeah, he had that famous never-ending. Well, I was going to say never-ending Beethoven, but it's a never-ending classical piano piece.
Oh yeah,
the you can never find the end.
Colonel Bogey, wasn't it, or something?
Yes, that's it.
Dun 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 dun.
I'll include a link in the show notes if people want to hear that, because it is very funny.
Speaking of Dudley Moore, in fact, he was part of. Let me just find this.
So our producer is looking at me through the glass. He's making the stretch for time, like stretching taffy kind of
absolutely
motion.
So there was a very.
You're back.
I'm back. There's a very famous comedy stage review called Beyond the Fringe.
Cambridge based.
Well, they were a mix of, two of them were at Cambridge and two of them were at Oxford.
Classic.
So it was the most incredible quartet of brilliant sort of comic minds. So it starred Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, who we've spoken about before, who later went on to do their own sort of duo stuff. Derek and Clive, and Alan Bennett.
Oh wow!
And Jonathan Miller, and it was incredibly successful. It debuted at the Edinburgh Festival and then went on to the West End and then to America, onto Broadway. And it's sort of regarded as, Wikipedia describes it here as, it is widely regarded as seminal to the satire boom and the rise of satirical comedy in 1960s Britain. So people like Fry and Laurie would have absolutely seen this show, and it sort of changed everything. So yeah, the idea of bringing together the best of reviews by the Cambridge Footlights and the Oxford Review, which both of whom would perform at the festival, and these four folk came together. And you can find, if you go onto, I'm sure, Spotify or Apple Music, you can find a recording of Beyond the Fringe, and it's well worth listening to because it's brilliantly funny and still very relevant today.
Oh, cool. I feel like, I know we've spoken about this before, but I get into such a rut in terms of listening to new things, not just new music, but like new podcasts, new shows. And it's so easy on Spotify to just, go through recently played or your likes and just listen to that. I listened to a new podcast called Adeptus Ridiculous the other day, and it was the first time I'd listened to something new, just totally new in a really long time. And I feel like it's almost a habit that you've got to force yourself to get into, to, put yourself out there and listen to these kinds of new things. Yeah. I don't know. I guess that algorithms have actually helped in one sense, and that it's Spotify and YouTube and things like that are good at recommending things that you'll probably like, but at the same time, they do trap you into. Perhaps this is just me. I don't know if you had this as well, but they trap me into just like a rut of listening to the same stuff over and over again.
I think much like social media, the advent and considerable rise in the popularity of streaming services exacerbate the idea of a sort of digital echo chamber.
Yeah, definitely.
You just can sort of very happily sort of blip along in your own little special world and not really embrace anything else. Whereas, if I'm wandering through town, and there's a very, very good record shop in Exeter, and it's very rarely open. I think every time, let's say if I walk past the shop 7 times over the course of a week or 2 weeks, it might be open once in that time.
Oh, wow.
So when you can get in, it's great, but you can find some absolutely brilliant stuff there. Sadly, my old housemate was the one who had the record player. I'm trying to get hold of a decent one at the moment.
If anybody has any recommendations, email in, because I guarantee that some readers will have record players and have opinions on record players.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I would really appreciate the advice, because I'm looking to make a purchase, because I do enjoy it. And I've got quite a few records of my own.
I mean,
as in records that I own, not records that I've produced of me just talking and then setting it to vinyl. Hello, you're listening to me. I know you are. It's you listening to me. Hello.
This is making me want to produce a Wikicast on vinyl episode.
That'd be amazing.
People have to apply.
Can you imagine that? That'd be extraordinary.
They have to email in, and we'll send them a custom pressed, and we'll have like an old timey version of the theme music, play like ragtime Wikicast theme. I'm sure Professor Can could help us with that.
Absolutely, I'm sure he'd be more than willing.
Well, going back to Gert Palmcrantz, because of course this is the heart and soul of this podcast now.
Yeah.
I can tell you that as well as producing Jazz at the Pawnshop, since 1994, Palmcrantz has been pursuing new techniques in audio reproduction, including the hand-built microphones of Diederik de Geer. That's not a name that's hyperlinked. I have no idea who that is. No clue. And also, the final sentence of the article, he has made recordings in locations as diverse as the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg and Carnegie Hall in New York.
Wow.
2 places I would say are pretty similar, really. They're both big cultural establishments in big Western cities. Like if it was, the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg and on the Varanasi in India, or in the outback of Australia, but like, wow, this guy gets around.
On top of Uluru.
Yeah.
In the Australian outback.
Well, I imagine a recording has been made of that. I imagine it's just pretty windy. Have you been to Uluru?
So. No, I don't think I have. I've been to... I seem to remember I've been to Alice Springs, which is quite close.
Right.
Now, this could be totally wrong. Let me check my geography here. I think if you're wanting to go to Uluru, you basically have to go to... I think Alice Springs is sort of the closest... Hang on. This could be so laughably wrong. Uluru.
You're the native Antipodean here, Dan.
Oh, I'm not far off, actually.
Are you, though?
Well, it's a very big place, you see.
Yeah, when you say I'm not far off...
I'm trying to get an idea of... Hang on, Google Maps, directions. Let's do directions. From Alice Springs, Northern Territory, Australia, to Uluru. Okay, so if you were to drive from Uluru to Alice Springs,
right,
it would take you 5 hours.
Okay.
It's 468 kilometres away.
So when you said it was pretty close...
But in Australian terms, because it's a bloody big place,
yes,
it's pretty. I think Alice Springs is the largest sort of nearby settlement. Like if you I don't think there's anywhere else you could really stay. Basically,
right? Okay.
Looking on a map, I think that's right. I can't see anywhere else that you'd be able to go.
Okay.
So you'd go to Alice Springs, spend like a couple of days there, and then on one of the days, do the journey out to Uluru.
It's base camp.
Yeah,
basically, base camp for Uluru.
Oh, there's a little sort of hotel nearby called Longitude 131, which is a 5-star hotel.
Well, I know precisely where that is in one dimension.
Yeah.
That could be in Japan, for all I know.
It's a luxe tented resort with Ayers Rock views.
Hang on, did you say Longitude 131?
Yeah, that's the name of the hotel.
Let me see. Longitude 131. Oh, if I actually type that into... They got good branding because that takes me to precisely that location. But it could also have been in... Right. It looks like it could just about be in Indonesia. It could be in... Yep, just about Japan. It might... I think narrowly misses... It's actually quite difficult to tell. Narrowly misses the Koreas, and then it could be in Russia. Or China. So it could be in a couple of countries. Or Antarctica, obviously.
Heck.
But I mean, that's just silly, Dan.
That is very silly.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we've had Gert shoehorned into our lives. What an interesting and distinguished sound engineer you are, Gert. If you ever end up listening to this podcast, apologies for the quality of our production, because it's probably not what you're used to, basically. But we hope that you enjoyed our ramble about you, and I tell you what, you said you were going to try and give this record a listen. I'll try and listen to Jazz at the Pawnshop because I do like jazz. He used to play saxophone. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Right.
The tracks sound good.
What are you going by the name? The names of the tracks?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. If the names look, I mean, this is like trying to pick a racehorse by what the horse's name is.
Excuse me. How else would you pick a racehorse? That's absolutely what you do in the races. You pick a silly named horse, and you might, if you want to read the horse blurb, I think is the technical term, then you're obviously that's your prerogative. But you just pick names that stand out. That's basically how it works.
I can't say I've ever been to a horse race or bet on a horse ever.
Have you not?
I don't remember doing so. I'm pretty sure I haven't.
I've been to some races at a race course just outside of Dublin, which I think is, what's that? Is it like?
It's Ireland.
I want to say like Tiger Town or Lion Town, or I'm not thinking of the zoo. I know that. Leopard's Town.
Leopard's Town.
Yeah. I've been to Leopardstown Racecourse.
I think I've heard of this place. I think that we might have talked about this on the show. To be fair, we've had 100 episodes now. If we'd mentioned anything, there's a very good chance we've mentioned it before.
Yeah, it's a nice racecourse. We had a fun day, and then usually if there's a big race on, then we might put the family might put a flutter. We'll each take sort of £10-15 and just put some money on and see what happens.
I love that phrase. I'll have a flutter on the races.
Flutter on the races, yeah. Absolutely.
That's something my granny used to say. I haven't thought about that in ages. Anyway, sorry. Speaking of very old constructs, Dan, what is your choral piece of the week?
And this will be my piece of the week. Drum roll, please. Now, my choral piece of the week this week is topical and fitting because I'm singing it today.
Oh!
And this is very exciting because when I'm not either sort of depping at Exeter Cathedral or singing at Buckfast Abbey, I'm still sort of going back and either singing or doing some conducting with the University of Exeter Chapel Choir.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very excited today to be premiering...
Oh my goodness, I know this, yeah.
A new commission.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. Timothy Noon, the Director of Music at Exeter Cathedral, has composed and commissioned for us the Latin Canticles. So the Canticles of a service of Anglican evensong are the Magnificat, and the Nunc and the Nunc Dimittis. They are set in Latin, as the name might imply.
Yep.
And they've been commissioned for an Exeter alumnus, Stephen Harrow, who was a much loved supporter of the chapel choir.
Indeed.
And it was very, very sad to hear that hear about his passing. So at 5:00 today, I'm not going to tell you what day it is. I'm just going to say at 5:00 today, we will be premiering that piece in chapel, and it will also be live streamed. So we will likely be able to, in the show notes, provide a link to that live stream, if folk would like to hear the Latin Canticles composed for the University of Exeter Chapel Choir. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be really good. They're an absolutely brilliant set of music. It's, Tim is an amazing sort of composer. He's very, it's sort of divisi choir, very fast, very loud, very clever. I enjoy it very much. But I've got there's a solo that starts the nunc and ends the nunc for the tenor. And I'm doing that. So when I finish this podcast, I'm going to be spending at least an hour properly warming up because I've got a bit of a cold. I don't know if you can hear in my voice. I'm a bit bummed.
No, you're a consummate professional, Dan. I couldn't tell.
Ah, gosh. Well, that's a relief. Well, I'll need to just make sure that I can sort of shake the cobwebs away and make sure. I think I've got to have a piano.
Piano.
G sharp, top G sharp.
Oh right, I thought you were talking about the instrument, and I was like, Dan, even by your standards, that's that's absurd.
No, I wouldn't say I'm going to go and play the piano. That would be. Well, maybe I'll start saying that though.
No,
I like that.
I'm just going to start deliberately mispronouncing words.
Yeah, why not?
Darling, could you please pass the gorgonzola?
The gorgonzola.
Like or the chimera on the tripod.
I think you'll find it's my prerogative if I want to start putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Oh, we're stopping this right now.
That's it. It's taken 101 episodes, but that's it. We're done now.
That's it. I'm out.
He's broken. So yes, the University of Exeter Chapel Choir are premiering Tim Noon's Latin Canticles, which is very exciting. And yeah, I think it's going to be really good. Very excited.
And the other thing we should point out is if you want to hear this, tough, because no recordings exist.
Yes, not yet.
Basically.
You will be able to listen to it at time of broadcast, but that's not until 5:00 today.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully in the future there'll be a recording because I'd like to hear them. And yeah, a lovely reason to have the music commissioned and commissioned from a lovely person. So all round, lovely. Well, that actually leads us on to potentially a less lovely section of the podcast because we've got some critiquing to do, Dan.
Oh yeah, of course.
So there's two things that I want to critique because, as we said at the start, it's been a long time since we've recorded the show, and a lot's happened. But I want to condense my contribution, at the very least, to two films which I know we have. Well, I think we have both seen, and those are No Time to Die and Dune. Two films that I have very different opinions on. Am I right in saying that you'd seen Dune?
Not yet. I hopefully.
Oh, you haven't?
I hopefully will be seeing it. I'm going up to Oxford for a few days, well, like 5 days tomorrow morning, and there I may well be seeing it when I'm up there. But I've heard such brilliant things, and I'm very excited to see it.
Right. Well, I'll very briefly and spoiler-free discuss it for the show, and I will say it is phenomenal. I will say that for context here, there's two relevant pieces of information, which is that I have read the book and found it okay. I could see why it was so influential, but it had a lot of problems that I think are mostly to do with pacing. And to be honest, that's something that in a film adaptation you can actually fix, because obviously you can manipulate sort of the flow of time relative to the source material. But the other relevant piece of information is that I am a huge Warhammer 40,000 fan. And there was a whole middle section of the film where I just convinced myself I was watching a Warhammer movie.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. It was exactly, how I would want to make a Warhammer film. And so it was just like wish fulfillment watching it in the cinema.
Sure.
But, it's Denis Villeneuve, who I loved his previous work. I loved Sicario, and I loved Arrival, and I loved Blade Runner 2049. So I knew I was in safe hands. And I was just so happy that it was a very faithful adaptation of the book. Captured the themes and the tone, I think, very, very well. Didn't compromise much on the complexity, while still, it didn't hold your hand. It wasn't like a Marvel film that was constantly explaining the plot to you. You really did have to pay attention. And it was just nice. Much like Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, it was nice to watch adult sci-fi, and not in the sense that there were bums and boobs, but because that's obviously the definition of adult.
Yes.
But in the sense of it assumed that you were an intelligent viewer and that you could piece stuff together.
Sure.
Which was just really refreshing, and it was refreshing in terms of its visuals, how kind of daring it was, and how abstract it was at a couple of points. Yeah, big love. I will say that there are legitimate criticisms of it in that it was too faithful an adaptation.
Right.
Because it was pretty much, they missed a couple of subplots, and obviously, you're taking 200 pages of a book and turning it into a 2-hour film. Like, you can't do everything. But it was pretty much exactly the book. And a problem with that is that the book does have a kind of white savior overtones to it. And in isolation, the first Dune book is like kind of, fascism's pretty good. If you combine fascism with jihad, that's pretty good. Which, for the record, that is not the Wikicast official position.
No.
But that only sort of comes out in the wash in the context of the broader series, where it turns out the protagonist is like not perfect. So yeah, and I don't know how I would have fixed that as a director, to be honest.
I see.
I don't think I could have done any better. But yeah, so Dune, love it. You should absolutely see it. Everybody, and see it in a cinema, for goodness sakes. See it on the biggest screen you can. But the other thing that I went to see in the cinema with Pixel Girl recently was No Time to Die, and you have seen that.
I have seen that.
And what were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, action films generally, I wouldn't say are my sort of go-to thing to watch.
Yeah.
I don't mind watching them. I think it can be a bit of sort of mindless fun. And some can be quite sort of tense and exciting, but usually the ones that are tense and exciting have a bit more to them than just simply being sort of an action blockbuster,
Yes, yeah.
I went and saw No Time to Die with some friends, and I think nearly all of the friends came out of the cinema going, wow, that was amazing. That was...
That's been the common reaction on social media, for sure.
And my reaction was, I didn't think it was great.
Yep, I would agree.
I would say I'd probably give it maybe a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 by virtue of it being Daniel Craig's last thing, and you know, it's sort of I think it's a well shot, a well sort of
interesting direction.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's lots of, as you say, there's lots of interest there, which is good. I think that's really good. I think from a visual perspective, it's a great film. It's really engaging. It's really exciting. I think from a sort of narrative point of view and from a structural point of view, I think it's deeply flawed.
Yeah.
I think it's quite lowest common denominator. And it just sort of, there were moments where I was thinking like, oh God, we're still going. Because it's a long film.
Yes, it is actually. That wasn't something that was advertised. I'm
sure Daniel Craig is pleased because he must have been paid an absolute metric.
He's paid by the minute.
yeah. So like his screen time would have just been extraordinary. But it was fine. I'm not going to. Certainly didn't come out of the film thinking like, wow, that was one of the best Bonds I've ever seen. I think Casino Royale is probably
I'd agree.
The best Bond.
I find it just slightly baffling that it has had this reaction on social media of this is better than Casino Royale. You know, it's might be the best Bond film ever. I agree that it's an interesting direction. I thought there was an interesting. I don't know if you noticed this. Interesting repeated use of vertical, looking straight down, bird's eye view shots. Sort of establishing geography, which is I thought it was quite a cool kind of technique to use. And it's certainly different to a lot of other Bond films. But as you say, I think it's the structure that really just kind of cuts the legs out from under it. And I have a theory about why that is, actually. I think this film was previously better. My theory is that it's not a spoiler to say that the plot of the film revolves around a form of weapon.
Yes.
And they basically introduce it as kind of like a bioweapon and then change their mind and it's nanobots. And then they don't go into any detail about how it works in terms of how you make it or, you know, whatever. And I think that this film had a much clearer structure in the past, and then the pandemic happened because this was delayed quite a lot. I think that it was better in the past, and then they re-edited it to avoid references to a kind of bioweapon.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's just baffling.
Yeah,
why they made the decisions they made. It's frustrating because I think I went in wanting to like it. I wanted to just go in and have an entertaining Bond film, and it was entertaining nonsense for the most part. But just, I don't know. Like, I just felt like it didn't. It was a sequence of events happening one after another, which is obviously what a film is.
Yes.
But do you know what I mean? Like, there was no rise and fall. There was no kind of clear structure to the film. It just was one thing after another.
Yeah. It's interesting. So a few days after having watched No Time to Die, I watched The Green Knight.
Oh!
Which I loved. I absolutely loved. Not only because...
Now, did you see that in the cinema or at home?
No, I watched it at home. I wanted to go and see it in the cinema. In fact, I wanted to go up to Campus Cinema to watch it, but there was a date clash. I think I must have been doing something...
Oh, no.
Musical like Chagford or something. It was a bit of a shame. But I watched it... I watched it at home, and it was still very good. I've got a decent sized television, so it was a perfectly good viewing sort of experience. But I was really excited to see it because it's the adaptation of I think like 14th century
Gawain
poem.
and the Green Knight.
Yeah, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which I studied in my first year, which was really interesting. Dev Patel is fantastic, obviously. Anything done by A24 always fills me with confidence because I know it's going to be pretty good. But I just loved. There was just so much creativity in that film, and so many moments of sort of subverting typical sort of structure and convention.
You're saying it subverted your expectations?
I'm not sure whether it subverted my expectations because my expectations were good and I was really looking forward to it and I watched it and I really enjoyed it and it was good and I enjoyed it. but it definitely subverted my sort of me thinking how they might do the adaptation.
Right, so it's subverting your expectations, but not on a story basis, but on a adaptation on a structural basis.
Yeah, on a structural basis, on a sort of cinematographical basis. Yeah, it was just great. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, likewise, I would like to, because I've not read the poem, but I actually listened to. I remember this so clearly. I don't know if everybody must have this, but I going on a run once, and I can so clearly remember the podcast I was listening to because I listened to an In Our Time episode.
Ah, yes.
About the poem, and it just really sort of stuck in my brain, and ever since I've just been. I'm not saying I'm thinking about it every moment of every day, but it has just been rattling around in there. So when I saw that they were doing a film, I thought it would be good to see. And when I saw the trailer, it's clearly very atmospheric. So yeah, no, I'd like to. I haven't yet, but Dune was the first time I've been to the cinema in about 18 months. I actually bookended my cinema experience very nicely because the last film I saw pre-pandemic was Little Women. And then the first film I saw when I came out the pandemic was Dune. So I had like a really good, book ending.
I didn't realise too that by virtue of having Amazon Prime, I just could watch the film for free.
Oh, I didn't know it was on Prime.
Yeah, it's on Prime.
Oh, damn.
I didn't pay for it.
Well, I mean that's what free is. Which
is remarkable because I was like, oh my god, yeah, it was a wonderful sort of surprise.
Yeah, I'll say. Oh wow, gosh, I might have to do that at some point then because I've just got so much stuff to catch up on, Dan. I've got so much to watch, and I have very little time to watch it in. I feel like, like I am perpetually. I feel like just racing to try and keep up with all the things I socially should be watching. Like I don't know. Have you seen Squid Game?
I keep being told to watch it. I haven't yet. I've since finished. I've been watching You on Netflix.
I'm not on
which
Netflix.
I've really enjoyed. Oh, I see. Yeah, good. Well done there.
Sorry.
Oh, hang on. Let me just go and tighten this noose. 1 second.
Jesus. Don't do it, Dan. You've got so much. You've got so many more episodes to live for.
I've been watching a Netflix television program called You. Yes,
right.
Simon Clarke. It's on Netflix. It's very good. I finished that, and I've been really enjoying that. But I just haven't. I don't know. I've seen clips of Squid Game. I've heard things about it. I'm sure that I will watch it at some point and just be like, okay, yeah, that was
a thing.
That was right. Yeah, but I'm not that sort of bothered by it, to be honest.
I assume you've heard of all the nonsense that's been going on with the Oxcast to do with it.
Oh yeah, with poor Lydia.
So for people who may not be aware of this, the very brief version is there's a lovely person in the Oxcast called Lydia who streams one of my favourite streams with them, which is Pokemon with Barry. And she's been on the internet for over 10 years now, and her username has always been Squid Game. I think in a couple of places it was Squid Gaming, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then when the Netflix show came out, she started getting confused, people tagging her thinking it was the show, and fair enough, pretty easy mistake to make. But it got to the point where fans were harassing her, saying that she was trying to impersonate the show, which is just incorrect.
Yeah.
And eventually they got her Instagram account banned. And it was eventually reinstated, fortunately. But she got her Instagram banned, and then she started losing out on work because brands were unwilling to work with her because they feared being confused, with the show, and that they had some kind of affiliation with the Netflix show. It's just so silly, really. She's had a really rough time of it because of it, and it couldn't have happened to a lovelier person. It's, just a bit of a shit situation, and I'm not gonna lie, it slightly put me off watching the series because I kind of associate it with this horrible thing that's happened. But yeah, so I haven't watched it, and to be honest, I would only watch it so that I don't get it spoiled, if that makes sense. Yeah, like I have no particular interest in it, stuff like that, and what's it called, Battle Royale. just don't really appeal, to be quite honest. And there's a lot of other stuff I'd rather watch.
Yeah, definitely.
But that is good grief, Dan. It's because we haven't talked on an episode like this for quite some time. I mean, the last time we saw each other, actually, the last time we spoke was at our friend Michael Graham's birthday party.
Yeah, when he turned 13.
Yeah, turned 13. Great cake.
Big boy.
I never want to hear anything to do with Michael being described as big boy. That's horrible. But yes, so we've just been catching up. So apologies, listeners, if this has been even more rambly than normal. But it's just been nice for us to catch up.
It's just coffee and a cake, little catch up.
With the ladies who lunch. Look at you! Haven't you grown?
Oh, Sandra, you lost weight. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh, you look fantastic.
Oh, come and get it. Mwah, mwah.
Did you bring your parrot along to the was that what that was?
Yes, yeah, precisely. Well, it's also time, Dan, that we caught up with our patrons in Patreon Corner. Top lad.
Off. I'm not verifying the sodding thing again. Why do you insist?
It's me.
Oh God.
It's me, Toddy! Oh, Christ, I've just realised, did I not post the bloody... I don't know if I actually posted the Greta episode to our Patreon.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, it's certain I did. Hang on.
Good effort.
I posted it everywhere else. I haven't posted since the 97th episode.
Well done.
Oh, my God, I'm a terrible patron. Oh no! Oh, that's awful. I mean, the last one I think is a bit understandable because I had a very busy day. I was shooting TV immediately afterwards, but like the previous two, I've got no excuse.
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's bad.
Well done, everyone.
Right, over to you to kick off.
So as Simon alluded to, it's that time again where we move to Patreon Corner, where we say an enormous thank you to those who support us on Patreon. Without Patreon and without your incredibly generous and greatly appreciated support, this podcast simply couldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to pay for our hosting, so when we record these episodes, they have somewhere to live and thrive. We wouldn't be able to pay for our glorious editor.
Hey, Fergus.
Hey, Fergus.
Our current editor, as Dan would say normally.
Well, look, we've been through this. I didn't say current to sort of sound like threatening to Fergus. It was more
current.
It was more
editor.
to show the Patreons that they are part of a flourishing history of supporting editors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just what we've got. We've got Adam, our editor emeritus.
Try saying that 5 times drunk.
We've got Fergus now, and provided that the work stays good, he'll probably be around for a bit longer.
Fergus, you're doing such a great job.
You are honestly doing such a good job, Fergus. It's incredible. As you well know, I've chat with Fergus on Facebook, so it's all kosher. It's all above board. Anyway, after that very, very tidy, slick, professional link, I would like to say an enormous thank you to those who
support...
support...
But what's a Patreon, Dan?
Thanks, man. That's really helpful. Oh,
I'm just trying to keep the show moving along, Dan.
I'd like to say an enormous thank you to those who support us at top
Patreon.com/the Wikicast is where you can support the show. You can donate $1 a month if you want, or it's up to $5 a month if you want to be top cow, top dog. It's patreon.com/the Wikicast. We don't say it enough.
I remember in our early episodes, like back when we started this podcast, that there was a period of time where we were just reading out the wrong email.
Oh God, yes, we did. We're terrible at this job. Like really, really quite bad.
People would be emailing in, and we'd have to then correct it by episode 6, sort of saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, the emails we were giving you won't work. They won't go anywhere." And then we'd get some emails back saying, "I tried emailing you, but the email bounced back, so I assumed it's wrong. I've tried this one, and let's see if this works." And fans would sort of correct our own mistakes. It was glorious.
As we've said several times, our fans are the best part of this show. Far better than us presenting it. Like,
oh, absolutely.
We really should just turf it all over to them.
Top Dogs. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all of you who support on Top Dog tier for $5 a month. So a sincere thank you goes to Eric Bolliger, Jay Wright, Ben McMurtry, Maggie, Peter Reed, Codzo, Colin J. Brown, Alistair Fortune, Eve Sharples, Lexi at Front Desk, Hassie Hansen, Aaron Jorgensen, Henry VII, King of England and of France, Lord of Ireland, Naflarok, Adrian Chan, Aaron Carey Augustin, Ben Caples, Josh Shiaga, Sam Harvey, Elspeth, Michael Gustafsson, and Martin Narciso.
An insincere thanks goes to me, from me, to the top cat. There was a fear, by the way, on the Discord that we'd actually run out of top cat spots. We actually put a limit because we just didn't want to spend ages and ages reading out names in the podcast. But I think we're rapidly approaching that limit. Yes, an insincere thanks to the wonderful people who support a top cat tier, and those are Abrupt Banana, Andy Hartley, Miko Sepola, Jerry Moore, Nathan Flaherty, Violet Hatch, Abu El Ella the Physics Boy, Simon P, Jack Easton, Izzy CC, Nafi Iftikhar, Christopher Betterton. Sorry, I'm just going to stop at Alice Springs, the base camp here of getting through these names. Yep. Dame Valerie III, Layla Medina, Oliver Craigie, Will Janice Humphreys, Rents Kirk, Oliver Burkhart, EZ, Cole Mansfield, Princess Andromeda, Choco Cat, Bendant, Isabella Strowski, Lewis Watson, Matt Maguire, and the one, the only, the legend himself, Dan Hanvey. You make the show possible. It's all your fault. Top lad. And we find ourselves in Correspondence Corner. Now, we said in a previous episode, several weeks ago now, so long ago, in fact, that we forgot until now that we said it, that we were going to be reading out a fan fiction that somebody wrote in. Somebody had created a Star Wars fan fiction about us, I believe, being two Padawans at the Jedi Temple.
So exciting. So exciting.
It's incredibly exciting, but we want to do it properly. And Unfortunately, we have been recording for quite a while and we have got to rush off to do other things. So we're not going to do it this week, but in the next episode, we'll make a note in our calendar that we're going to be doing it. So don't worry, it is going to be happening then. And we'll hopefully see if we can get some extra production put on for that, which should be really, really fun.
So for episode 102 of the Wikicast, brace yourselves to hear the Holopod.
Yeah, it's going to be something.
Yeah.
That's about as much as we can say. But we do have a couple of emails to read out this week. So if people would like to email into the show, you're very welcome to at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We genuinely do love hearing from you. The stuff we get from you, you lovely people, is by far my favourite part of the show.
Absolutely.
So please do email in. And I have an email here from Anne. Subject line, saving my teeth. So this is a follow-up from a previous email from Anne, several episodes ago now, where basically she went in to, if I remember rightly, get her wisdom teeth taken out. And because we've released a podcast that day, I'm getting up her email now, she said that the only reason she could go through with the thing was because she wasn't going to go under general anesthetic, but you know. Oh no, that was it. Yes. When we released a podcast episode, she was going to be going in to get her wisdom teeth taken out, and then it turned out that actually no, it's going to be just fine. And she credited us with saving her teeth. But I think she was put under sedation and sent us an email whilst very sedated.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it was, wasn't it?
Thanking us. And there's a follow-up email here saying, "Dear Simon and Dan, I nearly choked when you read out my email in your latest episode about how you guys saved my life and teeth, because I absolutely couldn't remember having written to you. A few days ago, I even had a conversation with my sister because I told her, while I was under sedatives, that I planned on writing us, and when she asked me if I did it, I said no. So thanks for reading it out and making me nearly laugh myself to death. Greetings, Anne."
Strong.
P.S. Dan, I recently moved to Dundee, and while I was walking along the Tay, I noticed there was a poem written on the ground. It's the poem by McGonagall about the Tay Bridge disaster.
Ah, Simon's favourite poem.
The best poem ever written. The poemist poem.
Beautiful railway bridge of the Silvery Tay. Alas, I am very sorry to say that 90 lives have been taken away on the last Sabbath day of 1879, which will be remembered for a very long time.
It's so bad. I love it.
And I've said before that William McGonagall is the inspiration for Minerva McGonagall's name.
Yes, you did mention this.
Yeah. which is great fun. We've got an email here from Sam Harvey, solicitor, PhD student, which I always look forward to these emails because it's another sort of fellow law
person,
aficionado. And the email is titled, "It is finally over / question for Dr. Clark."
Oh.
And Sam goes on to say, "Dear Moore, CJ, and Clark, J. Mr. Moore, I do hope that your honorary title conferred in the email. I did enjoy it very much. I apologise if you're already aware of the matters I'm about to dispose to herein. However, I write with some fantastic news. The saga of Bruz has concluded. I should also note that while in my first email I had to ask you to embargo parts of the email if deemed of a high enough quality to be discussed in the podcast, I'm very happy for you to share the whole email with this readership, which is fun." So for what Sam is referring to here, readers, is quite a few episodes ago now, I was talking about the very, very interesting court case going on in Australia, regarding. Oh, sorry, I just started reading the email to myself rather than talking. So,
I was wondering if something was going on in your room, and I was like, no, he just distracted himself.
Yeah, with reading. There's a very fascinating court case going through Australian courts at the moment concerning the YouTube personality Friendly Geordies, and a court case where sort of basically the Deputy Premier, or the ex-Deputy Premier of Australia, John Barilaro, was suing Friendly Geordies. And it's raised massive issues about media and free speech and lots of other things. But Sam is going to be able to sort of explain this far better. So, a few days ago, a settlement was reached in the matter of Bruz versus Shanks and Anor. Mr. Moore, I do need to correct you when you talked about the matter of Donahue v. Stevenson, 1932 AC 562, a few episodes ago.
Shame.
The V between the party names is not versus, as the Americans would have had you believe, but is said and. I'm sure this was an honest mistake, but it did make me shudder when I heard you say it. Yeah, fair enough.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
While we, being members of the legal profession who can consider the proceedings laughable in our honest opinions as litigation solicitors, are generally happy it's over, and Australia can just be a laughingstock due to our Prime Minister, Scotty from marketing, having a spat with the French. There is a general relief that what might have been a dangerous precedent has not been set. While the terms and conditions of the deed of settlement and release between the parties are confidential, it is publicly reported that Friendly Geordies has to pay $100,000 in costs to Bruz, not too bad, all things considered. 2 videos have to be edited to remove offensive comments. Friendly Geordies gave an undertaking not to publish claims about Bruz's personal life, Bruz being John Barilaro, the Deputy Premier. Especially important considering he's no longer Deputy Premier of New South Wales, and Friendly Geordies has to cease selling merchandise featuring the Deputy Premier. As many of your readers may not be legal scholars like your good self, Mr. Moore, I thought I might add my 2 cents as to why the settlement of this matter is very important. As you'd be aware, if the matter proceeded to trial and John Barilaro was successful, the scope of what is defamatory could have been expanded to include a new and very wide definition. This is of particular impact as Australia has uniform defamation laws across the states. Thus, if John Barilaro won, it would not only impact New South Wales, but it would also impact the good people in my home state of Queensland. Now, it would be open for the High Court to reverse judgment. The problem is, you have better chance of winning the lottery than getting before the High Court. Indeed, about 8 to 10% of all cases seeking special leave to appeal actually get a full hearing before the court. This is, of course, by design, as the poor justices only have a finite number of hours in the day and cannot be hearing every appeal in addition to the matters before them in the original jurisdiction of the court. Further, because the High Court has recently considered a defamation matter regarding the scope of publication, don't get me started on that matter, it's possible that the court would have been more resistant than usual to hear the matter. Generally, the court doesn't revisit a matter for some time after handing down judgment in the same area of law. Long story short, it's a wonderful outcome to see that common sense has prevailed. However, it's a sad day if you haven't got your Bruz merchandise. And there's a section here, which is for your consideration, Simon.
Oh, for mine, right? Yes.
Sam goes on to say, while I am writing to you, fine sirs, I did have a question, if I may, for the good Dr. Clark. I've recently been considering vlogging my journey as I undertake my PhD. This is something I've been considering for a time, as there's very limited information on YouTube about and the internet generally about regarding PhDs in law from a student's perspective. Obviously, the inspiration also came from your videos, which did have a significant impact on my decision to go down the PhD route, as opposed to doing another LLM or MPhil. I do have some concerns in vlogging as I work full-time and do the PhD as a sort of side project. I'm also conscious that I don't want to give too much away as it's very early stages, and I would hate for someone to come in and use my topic for their own research.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, do you have any advice for someone looking to start a vlog of their PhD journey? I'd also appreciate your thoughts of perhaps going down a different avenue, i.e. starting a blog with occasional videos or tweeting my journey. With the kindest of regards to you, fine sirs, Sam Harvey, continuing to age but cannot think of some special way to convey one's age.
I mean, very sensible to be asking these questions now, frankly, because it's you're right that there is a really powerful amount of good that you can do socially with a project like this, but you have to balance that against how it's going to impact your life. The aspect of research being ruined was something that I never really had to worry about, and that's mostly because I didn't publish during the PhD because of supervisor reasons, and so I was never particularly concerned about that. I'd actually think that in your case and in most people's cases that will be more of a factor, but I would actually caution that the thing you would probably want to consider more is how much of your life do you put into the content. Where do you draw the line in terms of what you what you consider to be personal and what you consider to be private. And that's something that evolved whilst I was doing my vlogging project. And I think initially there was more that I did keep back. And then there was a point where I was more open, and then I was like, no, this is a bit much, and then started dialing it back. And that's something that is between you and your friends. I mean, to be fair, I as you'll probably recall, Dan, I didn't give the choir very much of a say in how much they were featured in the vlog. It's with you and your friends, your family, and also your partner, which is the big one for me, as the reason why Pixel Girl is pixelated, because she didn't want to be in the vlogs, which is absolutely fair enough. And I'd say that is probably the bigger concern than being nerd sniped, as it were. In terms of practical things, the other thing to bear in mind is that there are lots of different ways to accomplish this. And as you've said, you don't have to do it in video form. You could do it on Instagram or on Twitter. I think those are far less intrusive. They're far less information dense in a good sense and a bad sense. Good in the sense that you don't have to worry about other parts of your life bleeding through, but bad in the sense, obviously, that you are actually communicating less to your audience, which they would like more. And perhaps for somebody who is doing it part-time, you're obviously very pushed for time as it is anyway. It may be better simply because, in addition to those points, vlogging is a very time-consuming way of making content. As Dan will attest, I was filming, when I would film a week, I would film during the day and then be editing well into the night, pretty much every night of the week, if it was a week that I was vlogging. So I think that's another thing that you will have to factor in, is that you have to practically make this stuff. And if you want to do it as a long-term project, it has to be a sustainable workload. So considering what you've said, I think that actually you might be better off doing it in another format, such as Instagram or Twitter, unless you are dead set on making video content, in which case great. But just be aware that I think that's a very difficult way of going about it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dan.
No, I'd agree. I think ultimately it comes down to that initial point you raised about what you deem personal and what you deem private and what you deem public, and sort of thinking through that dynamic. But documenting it in one form or another, whether it's blogs or vlogs or Twitter or whatever, I think that's a great idea. Yes, and you're right in that. I mean, there are more PhD things out there now, obviously, including my vlogs. But in terms of law, I couldn't name a single person who's doing a PhD in law on YouTube. So there is a gap in the market, as it were. But yeah,
it's a tough one. It's a very personal project. I can only say from my experience these points, and I think the time one is particularly one that I think a lot of people don't understand when they go into starting YouTubing and vlogging in particular, is just how time intensive it is.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what have we learned today? Do I ask you that?
I think I asked you that.
No, you asked me that.
Slick. So, Simon, what have we learned today?
Dan, I'm so glad you asked, because we learned about Gert Palmcrantz, a very distinguished sound engineer in Sweden who recorded Sweden's best-selling jazz record of all time, Jazz at the Pawnshop.
I adore that it still, to me, sounds like a Bristolian way of describing something as really excellent.
Gert Palmcrantz.
Oh, that's Gert. That's Gert Palmcrantz.
My mate John, we went round to his house last night, and he's from a little village called Chelwood, which I think I'm right in saying was a blessed village. I don't think they lost anyone in either of the world wars, which is very unusual.
Oh.
And he was basically we ended up talking about the whole Jackie Weaver incident and parish council politics, and it turns out that in Chelwood Parish Council there is drama, and he was relaying all of this stuff, and it was so funny because he was slipping into more and more of a West Country accent as he went on, and like it was like describing these two families and
both alike in dignity.
Yeah, it was like in fair Chelwood, here we lay our scene. And it was like introducing the people, like, and right, so the renovations are paid for by Bob, who made his money from the solar farm up at Marksby Plain, and then his son Jim sells logs, like just stuff like that. I adore him, and it was just getting more and more West Country as he went along. But I love that. I had this idea, and people write in if you think this you'd like to see this. I had this idea for a podcast of like just each episode is a different parish council's drama. Yeah. And one episode could be about the Jackie Weaver stuff, another one could be about Chelwood, something could be about Bridgenorth from where Pixel is from. Yeah. And it's just like you could just go on and on with it. I would love to do that podcast. I think it'd be so fun to just get involved in petty drama. Yeah. We also talked about films. We talked about Dune, No Time to Die, and Green Knight.
Yes, of course. We had my choral piece of the week, which is the Latin Canticles composed by Timothy Noon for the University of Exeter, which premieres today, and a link to the live stream, all going well, will be available in the show notes of this episode.
If Dan remembers to, send it to me. So yeah, fingers crossed that happens. And we had some fun emails, and next time, I'm going to put it in my diary, Dan, we're going to have some Star Wars fan fiction, which is going to be something. I don't want to. I hesitate to put an adjective on it, but it's going to be something.
Please ensure that your tray table is stood in the upright position, and just brace, basically. And that's all for this week's episode. Don't forget. I said week like a.
Idiot. Fergus, cut it.
And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice, join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
Parish Council drama, thoughts on No Time to Die, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole.
And we'll see you next time. Oosh.
Bosh. Big time.
Sells logs, mind.
Sells logs. Cider. Everyone and their mother's packing around here.
Farmers mums.
Farmers mums. You've got a mustache. I know.
No.